Thank you so much for utilizing this pre-recorded resource for the Title III Part A, Supplement Not Supplant, Professional Development Worksheet, and Validation Overview. My name is Laura Wake, and I'm the Post-Award Compliance Unit Manager within the Federal Fiscal Compliance and Reporting Division. Before we dive in, I need to share two different disclaimers with you. This one is our legal disclaimer, and it essentially states that we are operating on our most current understanding of the content that's contained in this presentation. It is subject to change, and it does not constitute legal advice. If you require legal advice, you would need to seek legal counsel. This disclaimer deals with recording in AI. The Texas Education Agency does not permit third-party recording or the use of artificial intelligence summary services during its grants-related trainings. Attendees of TEA's grants-related trainings may not use AI services, language models, applications, interfaces, or assistants to attend, review, or record the trainings. TEA further prohibits any person or entity from using the information included in its grants-related trainings to train AI technologies. Any attendees of TEA's grant-related trainings who violate this prohibition may be removed from trainings and may be barred from attending future grants-related trainings. Our agenda for this training: I'll provide an overview of the post-award compliance unit and the work that we do. I will provide an explanation of the Title III Part A professional development statutory requirements, which is not new, and the USDE monitoring visit, which is the why behind this newly added requirement. The ESSA Consolidated Federal PS 3106 newly added assurance and the Title III Part A Supplement Not Supplant Professional Development Worksheet requirement. The Title III Part A Supplement Not Supplant Professional Development Worksheet and breaking it down, looking at the options for that worksheet and the submission, and an overview of the 2025-2026 Title III Part A Supplement Not Supplant Professional Development Random Validation. The post-award compliance unit overview. So we are a unit that is housed within the Federal Fiscal Compliance and Reporting Division. We do a variety of things. One aspect of our work is that we review all the federal grant applications post-award. So for example, when a school system submits their application, it goes through the process with grants administration to the point where the NOGA is awarded. And at that point, that's where the post-award compliance unit begins our review of that application. And we check for any issues of non-compliance as it applies to statute, regulations, non-regulatory guidance, and grant guidelines. If we do identify an issue of non-compliance, then we reach out directly to the school system and work through that process with them to address the issue of non-compliance. Typically, that is done through an amendment to the application. In addition, the post-award compliance unit is responsible for a variety of random data validations, including the BS 6016 IDEA-B LEA MOE random data validation, the Title II Part A and Title III Part A Supplement Not Supplant Professional Development random validations, which are newly added validations, and the Title I Part A Homeless Reservation random validation, which is also a newly added validation. Title III Part A Professional Development Statutory Requirements and USDE monitoring visit. We wanted to give you a little bit of background on the why behind this newly added requirement. What is not new is that there is a statutory requirement that states that professional development that is budgeted and paid for with Title III Part A funds must be supplemental to any professional development that's required by federal, state, or local laws, including state and local teacher certification requirements for teachers of English learners. So we're looking for those Title III Part A funds to be used supplementally. Through the process of USDE's monitoring visit, it was identified that we need more subrecipient monitoring in place that speaks to this statutory requirement specifically. So that is the why behind this newly added requirement, with school systems being required to have a Title III Part A supplement, not supplant, professional development worksheet or equivalent filled out and kept at the local level. And if they are a part of the random data validation that will be taking place, TEA will be requesting that Title III Part A supplement, not supplant, worksheet or equivalent. So as I mentioned already, this is our response to USDE's monitoring visit and this identified need for more subrecipient monitoring around the Title III Part A professional development supplement, not supplant requirement. As I mentioned, the school systems will be required to keep a Title III Part A professional development worksheet or equivalent locally. And if that school system is a part of the random data validation sample, we would be requesting that worksheet from the school system. In addition, on the ESSA Consolidated Federal Grant application, there's a newly added assurance on the PS 3106. That's Section C, Supplemental Activities, which are the Professional Development Activities section. And you'll see here that the assurance is essentially the school system is assuring that the Title III Part A funds are being used supplementally for the purposes of the professional development, and they're not being used to pay for professional development that is required by state, local, or federal requirements. Title III Part A supplement, not supplant worksheet, breaking it down, we have 3 different options for documentation, and so we'll walk through those next. One option for the Title III Part A supplement, not supplant, professional development worksheet or documentation is the Smartsheet form. This is an excellent option because not only is it very seamless, but also once you fill that out, not only can you keep those records for yourself locally, but they'll already be submitted to us. So in the event that a school system is part of that 10% random sample for the validation process, if you've already submitted this professional development Smartsheet form, then we already have the information on hand. In order to utilize the Smartsheet form, there is which I'll walk you through the form in a moment in real time, but the subrecipient name is essentially the school system and the CDN number combined. So you would select that, you would select your region, and then there's a section where you are able to identify all the required trainings that are planned, the relevant class object codes, and the estimated amount. and the funding source being utilized to support those required trainings. There's also a supplemental training section that you will fill out. And in that, again, you'll utilize the drop downs to indicate the supplemental trainings that are planned, the relevant class object codes, the funding source, and the estimated amount to be spent on those supplemental trainings. In addition, if the supplemental trainings were offered in school year 2024-2025, so the previous school year, we would need you to indicate the funding source that was utilized for those supplemental trainings in the previous school year. And the reason for that is if a different funding source was utilized other than the Title III Part A funds, that would be supplanting. So you'll want to make sure if there's a supplemental training that was paid for with a different fund source last school year, that you're not now this school year utilizing the Title III Part A funds. Very important also is to remember to check the box that says, send me a copy of my responses. When you check that box, it will populate a field where you input your email address. And then when you hit the submit button, you almost immediately will receive an email from the Smartsheet system that will outline all of the choices that you selected as a part of this form submission. In addition to that, if you go this route, there's also a dynamic view set up through our work app system where you can also review the choices that your school system made on this Smartsheet form. So this just reiterates some of what I explained on the previous slide with the drop down for the relevant trainings, the class object codes, the funding source, estimated amounts, and you would do that for both the required trainings and the supplemental ones that are planned. And I will take us right now into the form itself. So all you have to do is click that link there. And then we are looking at the form. So as I mentioned, there is a drop down where you would select, and this is a test account that we have set up so that we can test all of the technology tools and make sure they're working properly. So I am going to select this. And then the region for that account is 21. Of course, we know there's not a region 21, but again, it is a test account for our purposes. And then you'll see here a drop down. Now, this is not an exhaustive list of the required trainings, but we wanted to put some options in place that are required so that you could simply select them. And when I do that, you'll see that the corresponding fields that I am required to fill out related to ELPS open up for me. So this is where I would select the class object codes that were utilized as a part of the ELPS training, and then the funding source that was utilized. So again, this is a required training, so we should not be using the Title III Part A funds. So it would be a different fund source that's being utilized for the ELPS training. And then the estimated amount that's being utilized. Now the 500 just populated for me because I've done a lot of testing of the form. You would just simply type in the amount that your school system plans to utilize. So maybe that's $400. Now, I also wanted to show you that if there are additional required trainings on here, you can select more than one at a time through this drop down, and that's the purpose, is that all the required trainings, if they're populated here, please select all the ones that are relevant for your school system. And then you'll see that all the relevant class object code funding source fields will open up that correlate with the choices you've made up here in this drop down. And if you make an error, all you have to do is hit that X and it will remove it. If if there's a required training and it was not listed in the drop down, then you can select this additional required trainings, and then it will open up all the necessary fields for you where you can manually enter the title of the required training. The class object code is a drop down for you. The funding source is a drop down, and then you would enter the estimated amount. And then if I were to uncheck that box, it would simply collapse those fields. The same is true for the supplemental. There are a variety of supplemental training focuses as a part of this drop-down menu. And again, select as many as you like. And whatever you select, the corresponding fields will open up to you. If you make an error, then all you have to do is X that out. So again, we have the same class object codes that we're working with. But here, the difference is since it is the supplemental, then perhaps your school system did use Title or planning on using Title III Part A funds. And then we'll enter the amount that we estimate spending on this particular supplemental training activity. And then was certification prep trainings to build capacity beyond meeting state policy requirements training offered in 2024-2025. This is what I mentioned earlier with the supplanting. So say, for example, it was not offered and you just say no. If it was offered, then you're going to see another field open up. Okay, well, it was offered. What funding source was utilized? And then we'll cross-reference to make sure the funding source that's planned to be used is in alignment with what was used the previous school year. If there's a need for additional supplemental training, something perhaps that is being provided supplementally that is not listed here, all you have to do, just like for the required trainings, is select this button and it will open up these fields to you to manually enter and just so on and so forth. Perhaps you need to even add another supplemental training that's not listed in the dropdown. So you have that option. Now, again, this is really critical right here that you select, you want to put the date, of course, that you completed this, and then select send me a copy of my responses. And then you would put your email in there and then submit. If you overlook this or neglect to do this, you won't have an email receipt of your responses. So it's very important that you remember to select this button, to put your email address in there, and then you hit submit. As I mentioned earlier, if you take advantage of this resource, this Smartsheet form, there's also a dynamic view where you would be able to go in and reference your submission at a later point in addition to the email receipt of it. So let's go back to our Title III Part A and find our spot, which is back here at the form submission, our first option. So option 1 for this Title III Part A supplement, not supplant professional development worksheet is to go the Smartsheet form route. Option 2 is the Title III Part A supplement, not supplant professional development worksheet, Excel version. This is a visual of the first page of the worksheet. It's the guidance tab. We also will go into a live view of this in a moment. On the guidance tab, there's also a YouTube video that was created as a resource tool for you to view how to fill out the worksheet. But you'll see here, there's the guidance tab. And then once we go into the live version, I'll be able to scroll down and you'll see the resource links. There's a tab for the required professional development that's planned, the supplemental professional development that's planned, and then there's an example of how to fill out the form as the last tab. This is what the required professional development tab looks like. And essentially, you're inputting the same information that's provided on the Smartsheet form. The difference here is that you don't have the drop downs to utilize. They are listed right over here on the required professional development section. There's a drop down for the class object code. You would enter the estimated amount, and then there's a drop down for the funding source. The same is true for the supplemental professional development tab. The difference here in this layout is that on the PS 3106, you have to identify the type of professional development focus. And so you would select the corresponding buttons here with what you've selected on the PS 3106 on the ESSA Consolidated Federal Grant application. This is the example of how to fill out the form. So again, you would input the professional development activity, the class object code being utilized, the estimated amount for that professional development activity, and the funding source. So the places where you can find this worksheet are on the post-award compliance webpage. And also, if you have access to the Federal Fiscal Compliance and Reporting Division work app, you will find a link to this worksheet on the work app dashboard. Let's go to the web page. And we'll go to compliance and reporting. And then post-award compliance. And then you'll see right here all the information on what's being covered in this presentation. In fact, there's a link to register for trainings. There is a link to the PDF version. And there's also a link to the worksheet itself right here. So we will click on this link. It will download the worksheet. And then here we are. So this is the guidance tab, and you'll see down here the resources are listed. Those are active links. And as I mentioned, there is a YouTube version offering guidance on walking you through how to fill out this worksheet. I encourage you to look at that resource. There's the required professional development tab right up here. You would put the school system name, the CDN. You would enter in your professional development activities. As I mentioned, there's a drop down for the class object code, drop down for the funding source, supplemental trainings that might be planned, you would list here. And then there's an example of a form that's been filled out. So that is the worksheet, the Excel worksheet option. Option 3 is that you might have a version of this at a local level. So you might have an equivalent that you prefer to the two options that I already shared with you. In the event that you choose to use an equivalent that you have created at a local level, there are certain aspects that must be included in that equivalent, one of which is that it must include a title of the required professional development activities, the relevant class object code, the estimated amount to be spent, and the funding source that was utilized or will be utilized for that required professional development. So essentially, it's mirroring what's included in the other two options. In addition, you would need to include that same information for supplemental development activities, professional development activities. So making sure that you're including the title of the professional development activity, the relevant class object code, the amount to be spent, and the funding source being utilized. In addition, the file type or format could be Excel or PDF. Those are both acceptable. And you'd also want to make sure that your school system name and county district number are included on the file. Okay, let's speak briefly about an overview of the 2025-2026 Title III Part A Supplement Not Supplant Professional Development Random Validation. There will be additional in-depth trainings offered in 2026. So this is just a general overview of the timeline for these validations and what you can expect on the horizon. It is, again, a random validation, and it's a 10% sample. The timeline for the validations taking place are March, May of 2026. A random sample, 10%, will be generated. And at that point, we would reach out to that 10% that's in the random sample. We would be requesting that Title III Part A worksheet or equivalent or the Smartsheet form, whatever the school system is choosing to utilize at this point, we would be requesting it. And in addition to that, we would be looking at the school systems as a consolidated federal grant application so we can draw that comparison. In addition to that, we will be requesting financial records from the school system's official accounting system so that we can compare the submission of the worksheet against the application, against the financial records from the official accounting system. The timeline for training and notification on this newly added validation, a Gov delivery will go out with more in-depth information in January of 2026. Early February of 2026 will include educational service centers and an informational session. In mid-February of 2026, school systems included in the validation sample will be notified and informed of multiple training sessions and office hours that they can attend. And then in early March, training sessions and office hours will be conducted and the validation will commence. We included here some relevant resources. All of these are active links. There's the Supplement Not Supplant Handbook, the Financial Accountability System Resource Guide, Funding Guidebook, English Learner Portal, frequently asked questions about funding. There's a link to the Title III Part A web page, English Language Acquisition, Language Enhancement, and Academic Achievement Act. Guidance on the Title III Part A Supplement Not Supplant Professional Development Worksheet completion. That is the YouTube video link. The Title III Part A Supplement Not Supplant, there's a link right here to the worksheet itself that I showed you earlier. And then there's a link to the Title III Part A Supplement Not Supplant Professional Development Worksheet Smartsheet form. If you have any questions or concerns or feedback or just clarification, or you want to chat about this whole process, please reach out to us at the post-award compliance general email box, pac@tea.texas.gov. You can also reach out to me directly Laura Wake at within the Post Award Compliance Unit. Again, I am the unit manager, and my email address is laura.wake@tea.texas.gov. And thank you again for utilizing this resource.